I just got a job teaching game development to little kids, and don't tell my boss, but I don't know how to make games. So instead of learning the right way, I made an unhealthy, impulsive decision and found a game jam. A competition for lunatics where you get a theme and make a game in anywhere from 1 to 3 days. This jam was starting in 45 minutes, so I said goodbye to my family, locked my door, and waited for the theme announcement. So the theme for this jam was sky, and the limitation was that my game had to be designed around the words Warzone and Donut. After 30 minutes at my whiteboard, I had come up with the idea for a game. First, I chose how I wanted to use the theme, so I turned Sky, Warzone, Donut into a space war inside of a torus-shaped space station. I came into this jam wanting to make an RTS, but I settled with a tower defense game. But I needed a twist, because if you don't have the years of experience to make the best game, make the most innovative and unique game. So, in the game, you're an astronaut waiting for rescue, and these aliens are trying to destroy your generator, but you need to keep the power running for as long as you can. But when you place and use towers, you're using power, so you have to actually manage the health of the station and the defense of it with the same resource. So now that I had the idea for a game, I spent the next 8 hours trying to pirate Sprite, a pixel art software, but once I gave up and forked over the $20, I did not regret it one bit. Please buy this program. Not sponsored, it's just great. So then I used my pretty terrible art skills to draw an astronaut with a space background. Then I followed a lighting tutorial for 2D games and made a guy that moves around through space with a sick jetpack. And for some godforsaken reason in Unity, you are defaulted to only being able to render 2 lights at once for 2D games. This looks like trash, so when you make a game, please bump this number up. Also, when making pixel art, if you want a bigger sprite, draw a bigger sprite. Using the scaling tool in Unity is the fastest path to having a disgusting looking game, because your pixels are different sizes and not at all convincing. Alright, now for day 2. Okay, so on Saturday morning I was in the shower having an existential crisis as I realized I didn't know what my game was. Leave it to the shower to make you think of the right things, such as what are my core mechanics, what makes my game unique, and I'm out of soap. I had a come to Jesus moment in the shower, and I realized that the unique mechanic of my game was the power. So I began thinking of ways to utilize this mechanic, and I thought about having a finite amount of towers that you would have to recharge and replace as you're playing. So I booted up Sprite while my hair was still wet, and I got to making the art and mechanics for my space station and first tower. And before long, I got this boy aiming and shooting, and don't ask how guns work in space because I honestly don't know. Then I made it so you could take it from the charger to the shooting area. This is done with an invisible hand in front of the player. When you press space, it snaps to the closest tower, and if I press it again, it looks for the closest charging port or shooting area and goes yoink. I initially planned a mechanic where you could yeet the tower over to the charger, but for lack of time, I chose to go yeetless. And please, 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 never make the things in your game run off of basic incremental counters every frame. Please instead use time, because shifting frame rates will completely change your game on different machines or even the same machine as your frame rate flies around. Next up, I made my first enemy, so the gun had something to do other than being a friendly fire machine. And at this point I was getting really tired, but like a warrior fighting to their last breath, I looked at my notes and declared that I wouldn't sleep until all the bits of the game worked. So next up, I made the most beautiful code of my life, because it justified 5 semesters of calculus by using trigonometry to make the enemies go around the circular map. Even better, this code worked the first time. Well, the enemies actually moved at light speed because I didn't realize that Unity uses radians and not degrees. So I fixed that up, and now for the main feature of the game, power. I drew up this sick looking generator, and I made a bar that fills up when your guns are charging and drains whenever the gun shoots. Then I reskinned that bar to work as the enemy health car. Last but not least for the night, the wave system. But first, please do not do what I do if you're an aspiring tower defense developer. The system I used for the towers to find their targets was by scanning through them all, checking which is the closest, then checking if the closest is close enough, then shooting. And this is so inefficient. Please, please, please just use a collider, and whenever the enemy enters the collider, it adds to a list, and whenever it leaves the collider, it gets removed from the list, and just shoot the farthest enemy or something like that. Please, it's just so much better for your computer. Now the wave system actually has some pretty sick code as well. I have two lists, one for enemies and one for numbers. So it just goes through the list of enemies, spawns one, then it waits a time equal to the subsequent item of the list of numbers. Also, I use trig again just to flex and also to make it so the enemies go the other way as well. And now you get to meet my biggest bug. Me still to this day not knowing how to do a circle collider in Unity that everything stays inside of. Stuff keeps popping in and out of the station like all the time and I'm too smooth-brained to fix it. So yeah. But here we are. I made multiple towers, made a few waves of enemies, then a text box for the remaining time and power. So here's the first gameplay test of the game, and there's obviously more to be done, but I see the sunlight, and that means I've pulled an all-nighter. So I'm going to bed. Alright, I started my final day by oversleeping way past my alarm, and well, I'll just let this clip of me and my feeling of dread looking over my to-do list speak for itself. More guns, more enemies, I want 3 of each, the plot, the tutorial, the main menu, the timer, the sound, bug fixes and playtesting balancing, a better looking power indicator, a you win and you fail screens, and yeah. So yeah, that's it. That means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have about to do each of these in about 30 minutes. So let's get crack-a-lackin'. So first things first, I needed 3 towers and 3 enemies for this game, and I feel like in my process for designing these, I came up with 2 principles that really help in game design. First, design around what makes your game unique, and design each mechanic in the context of other mechanics. For example, I designed the capacitor, a gun that does just one big explosion and uses its entire charge at once. This tower is unique to my game because it utilizes the power system and actually enhances its existence. Then I made the Shade, an enemy that teleports when it is hit by a bullet. This was inspired by the capacitor as it gives it a reason to exist and forces the player to understand how to use the capacitor. Then I designed the oil gun to slow down enemies, and Gremlins, a mob of enemies that run super fast, so you need the oil gun to actually stop them. Finally, I looked down and realized I had 1 hour left to create not only the tutorial, but all of the waves for my game. So I zoomed to finish the tutorial and create my waves with 0 game design and submitted the game 10 seconds late. No! What? But the jam organizers were saints and let me submit anyways. Yes! So in this jam, you were actually allowed to update your game after the deadline, which is nice, but it feels a bit dirty to be honest. It is bad practice because in bigger jams, the deadline is final, but for this one I felt I couldn't do my players dirty with a 1 hour tutorial and 0 game design testing. So after adding some sounds and some updates including bug fixes, gameplay fixes, screen shake, and me learning how to build my game to play in browser, which I highly recommend for jams, here's the first build of my first game, Save the Station. Follow the link below to play it.